looks like I'm singing a song that I don't know the words to. Okay, we're done. Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing a tag, and it's like the only tag I ever do anymore, and that is the mid-year book freakout tag. I still want to do this tag more than halfway through the year. It's a fun tag to reflect back on what you've read and enjoyed and not enjoyed of the year thus far. So I'm going to try to only pick books between, what month starts the year? January? Wow. January and June. January and June, because that's the first 6 months of the year. I believe that the original tag for this is no longer available on YouTube, but I believe Chammy from Read Like Wildfire, which I believe has also changed her channel name since this was uploaded, is the original creator for this. Without further ado, let's get into the questions. So, question number 1 is the best book you've read so far this year. I should have made a stack and I didn't. I'm gonna regret that later. My favorite book of the year so far has been The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker, which is an adult romance novel following a young woman, Calla, who was born in Alaska, but her mom took her away from Alaska when she was very young, and she hasn't been back and hasn't seen her father in many, many years and is estranged from him. However, she gets a call one day that his health is declining, and if she wants any time with him, she should probably fly out to Alaska. While she is there, she meets this very burly, very abrasive bush pilot named Jonah, who has kind of taken on the role of being her father's son, and she is forced to spend time with him, wrestle with him for her dad's attention. I absolutely loved this. I loved the Alaskan bush setting. I loved the evolution of Calla as a main character, from the Toronto city girl she starts out as and then becomes this like Alaskan wilderness aficionado. And her relationship with her dad is just so touching and heartbreaking. And I also loved her relationship with Jonah. The bickering, the fighting, I eat it up like candy. I love a good enemies to lovers trope, and this is no exception. I adored this book. It's one of my absolute favorite romances, and it's the best book I've read so far this year. Question number 2 is the best sequel you've read so far this year. That is without a doubt A Heart So Fierce and Broken by Bridget Kemmerer, which is the sequel to A Curse So Dark and Lonely, which is a Beauty and the Beast retelling following a young girl named Harper, who is from Washington, D.C., and she sees this very intoxicated woman being abducted, or she thinks is being abducted by this man. So she intervenes, ends up getting taken instead, and is transported to a fantasy land where she's the last hope of the prince saving his realm from a dark curse, and she wants nothing to do with it. In the sequel here, we are following 2 different perspectives from the first book. The first book we follow Harper and then the Prince Ren, and in this book we're following 2 different characters, and one is from a completely new kingdom to us, and I adored this. I loved the 2 new characters. I loved their perspectives. They are traveling together a lot throughout this book, and I loved their interactions as they were like road tripping and traveling and having to work together. It reminded me slightly of Lorcan and Elide from Throne of Glass series, which is a couple that I deeply enjoyed in Empire of Storms, and these 2 had slight similarities to them. And I just really loved this. I cannot wait for the finale to come out in January. This is the YA fantasy that I could just eat up for days. Question 3 is a new release you haven't read yet but want to. This is without a doubt. What is the title of the book? Crescent City? House of Earth and Blood? House of Salt and Sorrow? I don't know. The Sarah J. Maas book, Crescent City, is the name of the series. I still have no idea what this book is about. I don't care to, because I want to be surprised by it. I just know that it's like an urban fantasy as opposed to like a traditional fantasy. The main reason why I haven't yet read this is because I refuse to allow myself to buy this until I read Kingdom of Ash. So when I read Kingdom of Ash, I can finally reward myself and pick up Crescent City, which is probably my most anticipated book of the entire year, and I refuse to let myself own it until the other series is completed. Question number 4, most anticipated release for the second half of the year. This is so hard because I just feel like the second half of the year, I don't have very many releases that I'm super looking forward to, but one that I'm very excited for is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, who wrote the Natural series and the Fixer duology and the Pretty Little Lies, what's the name of that book? The Debutante series. She is one of my absolute favorite YA mystery thriller writers, and this is her new series coming out this year, and she's been talking about it so much on Twitter, and I cannot wait for it. I know that there is like a game involved and it's a mystery thriller, and I need to know nothing more than that because I'm probably going to love it. I've loved everything that I've read by her. I can't wait to read this book. Question number 5, your biggest disappointment. I don't really know that we can count this as a disappointment because I went into it with really low expectations, but it just fell so much further than even my low expectations, and that is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. I really didn't expect much from this because on paper, nothing about this was going to work. I mean, it's a prequel about President Snow as a teenager and he falls in love. I mean, nothing about that is anything I wanted. But then reading it, it was just so much worse. It was so much worse than that. And I was like, it can't be worse, but it was. And then when you thought that the book couldn't get worse, it got worse. And I just deeply disliked this. This was not fun to read at all. And I am sad that I took the time to read it. I did do an entire reading vlog for it, and it was our House Salt book club pick for June. So there's lots of discussion that I've been a part of in regards to this book, and it was bad. Question number 6, your biggest surprise. For this one I have 2. I really tried to only pick one book, but this one I have 2 because I've really struggled with YA contemporaries over the last several years because I just feel like I'm starting to really outgrow the genre. But there were 2 this year that I loved. And the first one was Tweet Cute by Emma Lord, which is this adorable YA romance about these 2 teens. One works for a huge corporation sandwich shop and one works for a small business sandwich shop, and they release products that are very similar to each other, and they get into this all-out Twitter war over these grilled cheeses that one feels stole from the other. They don't know that they're each other on this secret community app at school that they have been flirting through. So funny, it's so witty, it's adorable. Jack and Pepper and Jack, I love them so much. It's about grilled cheeses and it's the cutest thing. There's baking blogs and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Highly recommend. My other favorite is The Best Laid Plans by Cameron Lund, which is another YA contemporary that I just really loved this year. And it's about a girl who is falling for an older boy who is more experienced in the relationship department than she is. However, she asserts herself as being more experienced than she is. So in the attempt to make herself more desirable for this older guy, she asks her best friend, who's a guy, if he will have sex with her to teach her so that she can better impress this older dude. And obviously that doesn't go well. I just really enjoyed this a lot. It's really fun. There's a lot of underage drinking though, so if that's something that really bothers you, maybe steer clear. There's a lot of underage drinking. I really enjoyed this, and I really enjoyed the 2 best friends. I feel like I'm so hard to impress with YA contemporaries these days, so the fact that these 2 both got 5 stars from me was a huge surprise. I enjoyed them both immensely. Question number 7 is your favorite new author, which could be a debut or a new to you author. For this one, I picked Katie Lord, who is the author of Tweet Cute. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm definitely looking out for whatever she writes next. I will pick it up in a heartbeat. And my other, I think, might be Katie Roberts. She wrote Desperate Measures, which is a Jafar and Jasmine alternate universe romance. This book was probably one of the most dirty books I've ever read. It's super smutty. If you're interested, beware. It is very adult, but I really enjoyed it. It was so much fun. Jafar and Jasmine, who are characters in this small town where there's a cartel and they've there's a sex club involved, and there's all these other Disney characters. Like the second book is about Hercules, Meg, and Hades in a relationship together. We'll be reading more from Katie Roberts in the future, I foresee. Question number 8 is your newest fictional crush. I don't feel that I get fictional crushes in books anymore. It's rare, so I changed this to my favorite couple because I felt that that was something I could talk about more thoroughly. For this, I'm saying every couple in Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare, which is the first book in the Last Hours series by her, which is her most recent Shadowhunter series. There are like 10 to 14 main protagonists in this book, and they do all have some sort of romantic interest or partner, as is what Cassie Clare does, and I just really enjoyed all of them. Particularly James and Cordelia were favorites. I also was quite intrigued by Lucy and Jesse just because their dynamic is interesting. This book was just one big shipping fest, and I was fine with that. I haven't read that in a while, and I enjoyed having it back in my life. Oh, I also made a note that I wanted to mention another Cassie Clare couple. I read Queen of Air and Darkness this year, which is the third book in the Dark Artifices series, and there is a throuple in this book that I would die for. I love them so much, more than Emma and Julian, who are the main protagonist and ship in this book. No. They mean nothing to me, and it was beautiful, and I love them so much. Question number 9 is newest favorite character. This one was hard for me. I haven't had a lot of like really standout characters this year, but I did put that I wanted to mention Cordelia Carstairs from Chain of Gold, because I do really feel that she stood out to me the most out of everything that I've read so far. She is a very strong, loyal, dependent, just like all around fantastic friend. I just loved her. I loved reading about her. I loved her personality. I loved her drive, her ambition. I'm really excited to see how she grows throughout the rest of the series, because I really think she's going to come to be a fantastic character in this world. Question number 10 is a book that made you cry. I don't know that any book like actually made me cry this year, but the only one that I could think of that I think brought tears to my eyes would be Empire of Storms by Sarah J. Maas, which is totally cheating because this is a reread, and I read this back in like 2016 or so, and so like I knew that this would make me cry again because I cried the first time I read it, but I think it's the only book that I've read so far this year that's made me cry. I cried a lot. 5th book in the Throne of Glass series, and it's traumatic at the end. Question 11 is a book that made you happy. For this one, I chose You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hogel, which I've had so much fun reading this book. I loved the banter and the shenanigans and the antics and the pranks that these two played on each other. It's about two people who are engaged and who were deeply in love with each other at one point, but over their engagement have kind of fallen out of love with each other. The main male character, Nicholas, has a super overbearing mom that has inserted herself into their wedding and has really driven a wedge between Nicholas and Naomi. The pranks that they play on each other are hysterical, maybe over the top and uncalled for in some situations, but I had so much fun reading this, and it brought a smile to my face, and it made me really happy, and I loved this. And I wouldn't say it is The Hating Game, but it gave me some similar vibes of like the pranks and such, and so if you like The Hating Game, I feel that you would like this as well. If you like Christina Lauren, I feel you would like this as well. It's so much fun. Question number 12 is your favorite book to film adaptation you saw this year. Okay, this is what I've seen. I've seen To All the Boys I Loved Before, P.S. I Still Love You, which I loved. This was a fantastic adaptation. I love this series. I love the actors who play these characters and bring them to life. I love how Netflix has produced this series. I feel like it's really true to the books, and it just really captures its essence. So I have really enjoyed this. I would kind of count Hamilton as being like a book to something adaptation, right? It's based on a biography. And this I'm obsessed with. I never had the chance to see Hamilton in play form, and so when it was brought to Disney Plus, I about lost my shit. and I have watched it almost every single day since. Before Taylor Swift's new album came out, I was only listening to the Hamilton soundtrack. And then I also sort of watched Artemis Fowl. I slept through most of Artemis Fowl, let's be honest. I watched the beginning, somewhere in the middle, and then the end. So I was deeply confused when I woke up at the end and saw the end, because I missed everything else. According to everybody else in the room who was awake to watch it, it wasn't enjoyable. And then the last question is the most beautiful book you've bought so far this year or received. I don't feel that I've really acquired any super outstandingly beautiful books. I'm like looking at my piles of books to see if I can think of anything. This is beautiful. I love this cover. I think it's stunning. This artist did a phenomenal job. I love her hair. I love the like leaves. This is beautiful, but I don't know that it's like stunning or a masterpiece or like art in book form, you know? You know when you just see a book and you're like, damn, that's a beautiful book. I don't really have a good answer for that one, unfortunately. I would love to know what some of your answers to these questions were. What's your favorite book of the year? What's your biggest surprise of the year? What's your biggest disappointment of the year? Talk to me in the comments. Talk to me in the comments. I love to chat with you guys in the comments. If you want to follow me on Instagram or Twitter to keep up with my daily shenanigans, my links are on the screen now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I will talk to you very soon. Bye!